The Shinsen station of the Inokashira line was one stop away from Shibuya, a station it would take hardly 1 minute to arrive at via train. The station itself was completely underground, being located in a tunnel, and the only outside light that reached it was a faint amount coming in through the outdoor exit area at the end of the platform. Now this, due to the earthquake, all light was fixture has gone off. Aisana stepped on to the platform, carrying Orihari causeway on her back. There'd been no need for her to bite it. She didn't spot any station workers anywhere, and the ticket machines were out of service too. When she looked at the tracks, the rails there were visibly warped. Naturally, the trains had been at a standstill since yesterday. Kozure's breathing began to sound painful from time to time, but she wasn't conscious. There was dried blood plastered to her forehead. During the earthquake, she had been caught among the collapsing buildings and hadn't woken since. Gigal maniacs couldn't use their power to heal their own wounds. Pain compelled them to be reminded of the reality of their own injury. They couldn't create a local shared recognition to the effect of, I'm not wounded. They couldn't make it be as if nothing happened, but the human instincts wouldn't permit it. Which was to say that nothing of the fact that one couldn't construct local shared recognition when the other person was unconscious. Senna could now do nothing to help Kozue. So Kozue is kind of unconscious. Upon reaching the depopulated platform, Senna lowered Kozue from her back and leaned her gently up against the walls. Her expression was harsh. Give Lord Kozue only a single glance, then soon shifted her gaze back at the station premises, and glaring at a certain fixed point, she ground her teeth together. Finally found you. At the end of her line of sight. What? Okay. No, Norasa clearly did not come to the station in the AA end. Yeah. So this is the branching point. Two human figures stood lined up at the back of the dim platform. One was a tall man wearing high-quality suit. From head to toe, he gave off an aura of refinement. He had excellent posture, and relaxed smile played about his lips. The other was a homeless man, clad in filthy clothing. His hair was overly long, and his face had been left unshaven. Since he had his head lowered, it was impossible to be certain of his expression. The two of them had overly contrasting appearances, and all they did was stand quietly in this dark station platform where there were no other people. But there were no other people. So to Senna, both of them were objects of hatred. Norasugenji and Hatano Issei. Even if she wanted to forget them, she wouldn't have been able to.
妹を殺した。その二人が揃ってお出迎えか。
In the past, her mother and her little sister had met with gruesome end before her eyes. And these people themselves were the culprits who had killed Senna's family.
私の本意ではなかったんだ、セナ。
The homeless man, Hatano, murdered desolately, his head hanging.
あの実験を止めようとした。だが、私一人では動き出した歯車は止められなかった。この男が。
Hatano took a darting glance at Norris's countenance. Norris said nothing. His attitude of being utterly at ease remained
この
impeccable.
男が実験の継続を指示した。私はあの結果を。悪いのはこの男。ノロセなんだ。分かってくれ。
Senna felt altered as she listened to his words of repentance.
お前は母さんと妹を見殺しにした。それが厳然とした事実だ。悔いているならどうして逃げた？
世界を守るためだ。
でたらめを。
親に逆らうのは感心しませんね。
There, for the first time, Norris spoke.
確かに君の家族が悲劇的な結末を迎えたのは 私が指示した結果です。もう十分データは取れていたのでね。実に有意義な実験でした。
実験でしか。
有意義
She swiftly rebooted the D-sword in her hand. The shockwave from it stirred her long dark hair.
この男を殺せセナ。こいつが元凶だ。
言われなくても
Senna already leapt powerfully from the platform floor. She closed the distance without brandishing his sword, a wondrous demonstration of springing into motion from a standstill. The target was Norris Aginichi. She mowed him down with the D-sword, slicing apart even the air. His head went flying. Did he just really die? Senna followed it with her eyes. Norris's soaring hand abruptly warped midair. She watched it transform into her own father's face. Shocked, she looked at the headless body before her. It had been wearing a suit a second before, but now it was in a homeless person's tattered clothes. Powerless, it went toppling over backwards. Eyes wide, Senna moved her gaze to Hatano, who had been standing beside it. He, in turn, faced her as well. His bearded mouth had on a mocking smile. His face contorted as though a mosaic had been laid over it. His body contorted too. The next instant, Hatano had assumed the face of a man Senna didn't know. In age, countenance, and demeanor, he was a completely different person from her father. Senna was bewildered. He took another scrutinizing look at the end of the head she had just decapitated. After tracing an arc and falling, it had splattered blood on the floor. It was her father's face and her father's head. Senna couldn't tear her eyes away from it. Witchment brought about by a delusion. As she came to that realization, Senna's breathing went fast and shallow.
セナちゃんさ
The man who was previously supposed to have been her father was now a separate person, called Senna's name in an intimate tone.
君が今やったことって結局お父さんと同じっすよね
It was the result she'd longed for these past 6 months. It should have been. Despite that, Senna was assaulted by uncertainty.
父親の首跳ねて殺すってえぐいな
父さん
Why is she experiencing such psychological shock? Still not understanding the reasoning behind it, Senna heard the sound of something tearing apart with a snap deep in her ears. I heard a voice. It was the scream in Senna's heart. Upon hearing that cry, which resembled madness and seemed to curse reality, I came running to Shinsen Station, but by then it was already too late. When I entered the dim premises, the faint smell of blood hovered in the air. Cosby was lying down by the wall, unconscious. And on the platform, there was Senna's form sunken down, back facing me. Her head was lowered, making her long hair cover her face, keeping me from seeing her expression. Next to her was a headless body. The round object lying fallen a short distance away was the head that had once been connected to the corpse, I realized. Atano-san. Becoming aware that it was him, I bit my lip.
こいつはラッキーっすね
A lone man stood on the tracks. Though he was in a suit, he also wore a rucksack, and from within, it reverberated a nasty mechanical noise. Suwa Mamoru, a detective in the investigative department at police headquarters. I had met this man before, and I knew what this man had done.
もともとは目障りな畑の親子を処分しに来たんすけどね西条くん 君が自分から火に飛び込んできてくれて感謝感激っす。君を見かけたら捕まえろってことになってるんすよ。
誰に？
But I don't know. Not really trusting the death of, you know, the Norase.
内緒っす。
Because what are they gonna do about Noah 2 without Norase? The flippant smile, the way of smiling, brought his lead partner, Detective Ban, to mind. But there was a decisive difference between them. Detective Ban's smile had been a performance meant to set the other person off guard or else irritate them. When it came to Sue, on the other hand, this sly smile itself was his true
あん
nature.
たはノロセの居場所を知ってる？
西条くんさ。
Sue shook his head exaggeratedly and let out a sigh.
口の利き方に気をつけてほしいっすね。自分の方が年上っすよ。
Reminder that the following scenes are not for the faint of the heart. For the faint of heart. Sorry. Without taking my eyes off Sue, I cautiously jumped from the platform down to the tracks. I ended up so that I was shielding the motionless sinner with my back.
アンっていう人を殺したのはあんた
だから
刑事のくせに人を殺すなんて。
君には言われたくないっす。
I clenched my D sword
あんた
tightly.
みたいなやつに敬語を使う義理なんて。
あのさ、お前に言われたくねえって言ってるんだよ。
I could tell clearly, even from this distance, the smile had disappeared from Sua's face.
お前も人殺しだろ。違うとは言わせないぞ。お前は葉月志乃を殺した。俺は今すぐにでもお前をぶち殺したいんだよ。
Hazukishino the Nose had been the true new gen criminal. The two of them were fellow disciples of the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light. Was that all that was to it? I gulped down the breath.
信仰の救いのためにそれは自制するが、その代わり俺が心を殺してやる。
I immediately started to brandish my D sword. Nothing was going to come of brandishing it, though. I'd simply done it on reflex, and just as expected, it didn't make any difference. All of a sudden, an astoundingly powerful wind blew at me. Pushed back by it, I almost fell over, so I desperately braced myself. But my body didn't go through with it. Instead, I curled up in a ball on the spot. I couldn't control my own body. It moved by itself, like it didn't belong to me. Before I knew it, my surroundings had gone dark. Below me was a nighttime vista that one might easily mistake for a field of stars. It came to the realization that I was standing somewhere incredibly high up. That there were 4 guys and girls I'd never met. No, I'd seen them before. For some reason, she wasn't wearing her glasses. No, not Yua. She was Mia. Yua's not younger twin sister who should have died a month ago. In other words, this was the roof of Cornelius Tower. And my body wasn't my own. I was wearing an unfamiliar school uniform, and even my stature was more brawny. To begin with, I could guess who I was based on the fact that there were only 4 other guys and girls near me, crumpled down, petrified, wailing and crying. The body into which my consciousness had climbed. It belonged to one of the 5 victims who had died in the first new-gen case, the group dive. Without my will having any bearing on it, my field of sight slowly moved. It slid to the side. I turned back toward the heliport. Shogun, who had filmed that video, must be there. Shogun wore a Darth Spider helmet on his head and a black cloak over his body. The Shogun who had cornered me at O-Front, who had put on a similar setup. But was he really Shogun? No. No matter how I looked at it, his legs sticking out slightly from beneath the black cloak were clad in slacks. On top of that, they were as thick as those of a regular adult male. They weren't the skinny, pitiful legs of Shogun of Nishijou Takumi, whose bones protruded visibly. Looking more closely, even his seated height was totally different. The cloak kept them hidden, but his shoulders also appeared fairly broad. At the very least, he wasn't Nishijou Takumi. Nor was he carrying a video camera. Moreover, from the darkness spreading out at the fake Shogun's back, I heard dragging footsteps. And not just one set of them, it wasn't a hallucination. Those peculiar footsteps belonged to many, many people. It meant that several dozen somethings were looking beyond the darkness. These footsteps hadn't been part of the video upload on YouTube. Besides, there was no way such a large number of people could have accessed this heliport. What the hell was the source of this sound? The four others next to me screamed and wept in lamentation. Disregarding my will, my body too let out a cry and began shaking. Something was approaching. If I were in a cheap horror movie, these scraping footsteps would turn out to be from zombies. Zombies, their rotting bodies swaying slowly as they walk, both their hands extending limply in front of them, but that was only what happened in movies. The map zombies couldn't possibly show up in reality, much less in the 21st century Tokyo. So what about it? My chest seemed about to cave in with fear. I wanted to look away, but the owner of the body I'd entered wasn't averting his eyes. At last, those unknown beings began to emerge from the darkness. They flooded the heliport, leading off our escape route. I didn't know whether to describe this as getting the wind knocked out of my sails. What appeared were perfectly ordinary people. They wore suits, student uniforms, parkas. They were different ages and genders, but all of them were the sort of people you'd normally see walking about in Shibuya at night. If you overlooked a single point out of nearly 100 people there, every one of them was holding a bladed weapon. None of them said a word. They simply wove a dissonant melody, made out of the mingling of the numerous wild nasal breaths. For some reasons I couldn't see their expressions too well. It was like all of their faces were made of paint blurred by water. The faces were vague, disintegrating. Were their faces truly deformed? Or else at my side, watching them gone off kilter? I couldn't tell. With lethargic but certain steps they were coming our way, like robots ordered onward by a single program. I thought maybe the fake Shogun was giving them orders, but he didn't appear to be doing so. Once in a while he moved his wheelchair forward a tiny bit, and afterward he didn't budge an inch. The 5 young people being driven back had nowhere to run in order to escape from this incredibly high place. "180 meters above the ground, holding their blades, the crowd approached. Little by little, bit by bit, they'd already closed the distance to the point. Still silent given at this final stage, drawing near us without attempting to leap upon us all at once. The horde moved about bizarrely, but as a result seemed far more dreadful, even enough to make me think I wanted to get out of here right away, even if it meant jumping off.
その目
誰の目？
The voice I heard unexpectedly. It was that of the real Shogun Nishijo Takumi, but I had heard it not from the direction of the Shogun wearing a Darth Spider helmet, but rather from straight overhead. Apparently I hadn't been the only one to hear it. 5 of us who were being hunted down stood out as if we'd received our cue, joined our hands with each other and looked up at the night sky. More naturally, all that spread out there was a starscape. I didn't see Shogun anymore. He'd been looking in into our thoughts.
誰の目？
The field of sight slowly panned across, and mysteriously enough, although the night scenery of Shibuya ought to have been spreading out below me, a long flight of stairs stretched out there. Went right to the roof of a building standing close behind Cornelius Tower. And the adjacent building, not Science City, which was on the other side of the Shuta Expressway, a building standing close beside Cornelius Tower, despite the fact that nothing of the sort existed in reality. Even so, the 5 of them harbored absolutely no doubts about those stairs possibly being illusory. And without a sense of salvation, their emotions were conveyed to me as well. They stepped forward and they jumped, holding each other's hands. It was exactly how the group dive incident had concluded. But they hadn't taken the dive because they wanted to, and when the stairs, which they'd utterly convinced themselves were there, turned out not to exist, and the sensation of beginning to fall shocked them, they shrieked from the bottom of their hearts. We were falling. A horrendous wind pressure lashed at my body. The girl next to me, holding my hand, screamed in a voice like a beast howling. She clutched my hand so hard, her nails dug in. This amount of time took us to plummet 180 meters. The rocket rushed up since the area was around us was also dark. I came close to lapsing into an hallucination of being sucked down endlessly into the middle of darkness. And then, all 5 slamming into the ground. Were crushed. With a crunching sound, the pain of it grabbed hold of me without my expecting it. That single blow, leading straight to death. Its impact made it seem like my entire body had exploded and been ground to fine powder from the inside out. I experienced the sensation of my heart contracting violently from the shock of it. My consciousness cut off there. My eyes were coercively made to open, and the scenery flew into my vision without my consent. I was walking along Tanagawa Street. My body was completely intact, even though the previous sensation of colliding with the ground lingered distinctly within me. This is probably where we get ISA. I was walking normally down the street, not that what I willed had anything to do with it. This body, too, was sturdier than mine. It wasn't me either. It was a nasty premonition. Suddenly there was a strange man walking toward me. When I saw him, I was forced to acknowledge that my hunch had been right on the money. The man I passed was clothed in a suit, but for some reason he wore a Darth Spider helmet on his head. The image he made was too much surreal. Was much too surreal. For no other passers-by, I wanted to flee from here this very second. Despite that, the owner of the body my consciousness had come into turned back into towards this Darth Spider-Man had just passed. The Darth Spider was standing right behind me, so close it seemed like I could feel his breath coming from my blind spot. He sucked me in the stomach. All the tension dropped out of my body and vision went pitch black. After some time, I felt a searing pain in my abdomen. When my field of sight opened up again, I was in an operating room. Before me stood Hazuki Shino, her nose is wide open, her stomach bloody. Though she was deathly pale, she gave me a kindly smile. In her hand was a scalpel. She slowly laid it against my belly. Hazuki's hand pressed down. A rift appeared in my skin. Oh! Blood sprayed from the wound, catching up on Hazuki Shino's face. Even then, her smile remained pasted on. I watched, overwhelmed by dread and pain, as she gradually slashed me open. We're gonna see all this stuff happening now, I assume. I had viewed the spectacle once before, when I read Hazuki's memories. In short, this was the pregnant man incident. The pain in my stomach was becoming unbearable, screaming and crying. I tried to somehow escape by squirming. My limbs were tied down to the bed, and I couldn't move away. Shaking myself made the pain in my abdomen grow still more intense.
信仰の救いをあなたに。
Shinko squeal. Skin cleanly sliced apart by a scalpel. Hazuki's fingers probed the opening from below. That simulation alone stabbed me with enough agony to shatter my fingers writhed inside me, and the feeling of them came through to me clearly. And just as I had seen before in her memories, Hazuki forced my wound to open on both sides. The sensation of skin and flesh ripping. Taking it straight on, sans anesthesia, I and the possessor of the body which I'd entered lost consciousness. Then soon woke again from an excess of pain. But Hazuki went on making the wound widen impossibly. I'd long since stopped caring about little details, which part of me heard about where my body pain was coming from. I had the illusion that all of my nerve endings were being pierced through with burning needles one by one. And I passed out again, and I couldn't escape. The pain mercilessly forced my consciousness awake. My body convulsed. If it meant being released from this suffering, I thought I'd be fine with biting my tongue off. Next, Hazuki picked up a bloody fetus that made her smile appear conversely revolting. This woman was insane. She took the remnants of the fetus she'd removed from her own body and plunged it into the depths of my stomach. Her hand and the fetus she held there shoved aside my innards, boring into me, gnawing deeper into her. It started to vomit blood, and it got caught in my throat. But even while I seemed about to suffocate from it, I went on emitting wheezing screams. Maybe because the pain had made my brain release too many neurotransmitters. My head felt really vague, but the pain still didn't ease up. I began to understand less and less of what was happening. Pain was all that controlled me. Hazuki withdrew her hand from my stomach and nodded with satisfaction.
よく我慢できましたね。
She said softly, as if she were dealing with a patient. Then abruptly fainted and collapsed in place. At the almost exact time somebody entered the operating room, the sound of his shoes rang out. But I had no interest in whoever it was, and went on bawling and shrieking, exposed to nothing other than excruciating anguish. Seeing the unnatural swelling of my abdomen, I panicked. Together with the pain, I had begun fleeing a kind of feeling, kind of some itchiness. It itched hard, and I wanted to scratch at the wound. But my hands were bound to the bed, and I couldn't do it. Suddenly, a shadow fell across my sight. The spider had appeared, looming in front of me. He picked Hazuki up in his arms and left the operating room. Then, after some time, returned by himself. I didn't know what he was thinking, but he had a sewing needle and some fishing line with him, and he began ponderously stitching together the opening of my wound. And at this point, the pain it caused was absolutely nothing compared to the pain of having a foreign object pushed into my body. and the pain of my flesh tearing apart. Our spider's searching was incredibly sloppy. In elementary school, I'd have done a better job. When he pulled at the fishing line, it chafed against the holes he'd made in my skin. The wound grew more itchy. An unbearable itchiness. An itchiness that seemed to seethe up from inside me. Itchy. 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 I wanted to scratch it. If he'd let me, I'd be happy to die. The throbbing edge insinuated its way into my pain. The itchiness, more so than the pain, was driving me out of my mind. Because of my mental state, it took me a while to notice that the scenery had switched at some point. Whew. Whew. That's some intense stuff. Yeah, I'm ready, but it's like a lot of reading, so I've got to take a short reading break. We've been at it for like 6.5 hours by now. The ache and itchiness subsided minutely, but it didn't mean they had gone away completely. Now, even as I walked through the neighborhood of Shinsen, itchiness and the depths of my body and the sensation of something foreign in my abdomen and the pain like having a fine needle plunging in and out of my body, they stayed behind me in a as markedly as a tumor, continuing to psychologically torment me. Dark road with 3 people on it. Located away from the heart of the city, that darn no-one noise. As I walked down it, I spotted a human figure coming my way. Since the road was narrow, we would have to angle ourselves sideways to pass one another. But I went cold when I saw the appearance of the figure walking toward me. It was that Darth Spider-Man again. We crossed paths. Darth Spider displayed no particular reaction. My heart went into a tumult. My emotion resembling obsession rose at the back of my brain. Nasty old asshole had been hitting on my woman. It pissed me off. I wanted to kill him. That feeling, truly coming from out the left field, truly coming out of the left field, drove me into motion. The face of my woman was vague in my memory. I couldn't recall her clearly. It was doubtful that she even existed in the first place. But despite that, the face of that nasty old asshole who had been hitting on my woman appeared vividly at the back of my mind. I'd seen that face before. He was the victim of the staking incident. My memory leapt ahead, and I was in a familiar dark, narrow alleyway, and this was the scene of the staking. And in front of me was the victim who died there. I was tightly clenching again the aging man's neck. His body convulsed violently, and bubbles frothed from his mouth, and his eyes rolled back in his head. I went faintly cold, tasting the sensation of someone's life disappearing in my own hands. At least the man's body stopped moving. After confirming this, I, Komaeda, carried out the actual homicide in this case. I took my hands off his neck, kicked his fallen corpse once in the side. I began to make my departure. Komaeda. I don't remember the name. I'm hearing a voice. I turned around to look, and the man who should have died had risen, and the whites of his eyes showing. His hands reached for me. Zombie? Who knows? With a shriek, I punched him down. But through his movements themselves were sluggish, he kept rising without fail. I seized his neck again. In the same way as before, more powerfully than before. putting my whole body and spirit into it. I strangled him as hard as I could. With enough strength to snap the bones in his neck, he soon stopped moving again. This time I put my ear to his mouth, making sure he wasn't breathing. Then let go of him. For some time I watched over him. Then for some reason, the man who should have been dead jerked again, his body quivering, but began to get up. The expression himself remained absolutely unchanged, with the face of the one who was dead. Yet he rose up and approached me. I started to retreat, terrified my stood. When I looked down at the foot with the start, a huge number of cross-shaped stakes were scattered across the roadway. A phrase from one of Phantasm's songs played at the back of my brain. Strike the stake, strike the stake. I had to drive a stake into the monster in front of me, and stopping from moving. If not, I'd be screwed. Controlled by that sense of danger, I hurled the rising man back against the wall and picked up a stake. Didn't know when it had happened, but my other hands were slightly holding a hammer. My consciousness returned to the operating room, but I wasn't the pregnant man. Komaeda Shingo was arrested in Chapter 8 for the murder of Professor Ota. Although the pain from it and the sensation of an object in my stomach kept on torturing my nerves to their very limit, there were two human forms in field of my sight. They watched me steadily with bated breath. One was Darth Spider. So I'm gonna take a brief. The other was Hazukishino, and her uniform wasn't stained by blood now, and so I soon figured out that this wasn't the pregnant man incident, but instead something taking place at a different time. It had been made to lie in bed. The needle for an IV drip was stuck in my arm, but it wasn't as if anything were flowing into me. The liquid pouring down the IV tube was flowing backwards. Blood circulating within this body was flowing out of the IV needle. A terribly grungy looking bucket was the only thing at the end of the tube. Blood filled it to the brim. Into it fell one drop, then another drop of the blood dripping from the tube. My head went blank. I was outstandingly dizzy. That pleasant feeling, like my consciousness was about to go off into the distance, mingled with the ongoing pain left behind in me from the pregnant man. I was overcome by an amazingly peculiar sensation, as if they were showing off to me. Darth Spider and Hazukishino embraced each other gently, like lovers supporting one another. Hazuki had a blissful look on her face. I couldn't comprehend how she could make a farce like that, right in the middle of creating the desiccated corpse from the vampire case. But before I could think of why I had trouble understanding it, pain turned severe. My throat became incredibly dry and my sight steadily went dark. And finally my consciousness began slowly clouding. I realized this was the vicarious experience. I was being forced to vicariously experience the sequence of new gen murders, the pain and fear from each one of them. I was being forced to taste it. If so, then there were still 3 remaining. Becoming aware of that, I despaired. Zetsubo shita! Zetsubo!
Sensei!
Someone addressed me and I came back to myself. I should have been in the operating room, but I was standing in a hospital corridor.
Takashino sensei!
Still without any connection to my will, my body turned to face behind me. There was Hazuki Shino wearing a somewhat melancholy expression.
折り入ってご相談があるんですが、ここだと人目につきますから、こっちに。
She said apologetically, then entered an examining room. I shouted, "Don't go," in my heart, but of course my voice didn't reach him. Since the current time was outside treatment hours, there was nobody in the examining room. Hazuki continued toward the back. Dr. Takashina followed her without harboring any suspicions whatsoever. She came to an abrupt stop just as I wondered what she was doing. A man with something black on his head sprang out from the shadows. While I stood there in startlement, he pushed something like gauze over my mouth. Then I lost consciousness. A huge noise rang in my ears. My skull was vibrating ferociously. This wasn't just vibrating, it was being whittled away. I felt that sensation distinctly. Oof. The sound died down, and when I opened my eyes, I was back in an operating room. A number of lights, like a gathering of eyes, hung down from the ceiling. Shining brilliantly, they illuminated my face.
頭蓋骨が外れましたよ、先生。
Cranium? What was cranium in German?
先生の硬膜、とても綺麗だわ。
Turamata, what is that in German? Hazuki said in a tone of rhapsody, then used a pair of scissors to cut away the tough membrane covering my brain. Feeling it was directly as it happened, I was entrapped in an impatient, sickened frame of mind. I rather, Dr. Takashina hadn't known that Hazuki was capable of performing surgery, not to mention open brain surgery. That was why astonishment came first, followed by my noticing that anesthesia kept my body from moving. Hazuki wasn't the only one in the operating room. A man with a black thing on his head, though Spider was there, too. He stood there immobile without saying a word.
人は脳死状態でも人工呼吸器なしで1週間以上生きたっていう事例があるんです。ご存知ですか？
Smiling gently, Hazuki murmured something strange by my ear. Another.
脳がなくてもしばらくは生きていられるっていうことですよね。先生はどれくらい生きられるかしら？
I shuddered. Another terror roiled through me. Hazuki held the spoon up before my eyes. The spoon left.
高階先生に
A
信
no-brainer.
仰の救いあれ。
Yeah, this is a no-brainer. The feeling that something that didn't belong there pushed hard into my head. I say in my head, but I don't mean that metaphorically. It was literally inside my head. The sense of something entering and moving around in there. There was no pain. Even though it was more than enough to repulse me and terrify me. As I shook something of a lump of gel down and blah. I glanced to see what it was, but my eyes, a clean pinkish through it, but the shape was smashed, almost like Sol Monroe. Salmon. At first I said it was part of my own. Then it's just fast for me. I'm too tired.
救いあれ。
But Hazuki's hand didn't stop moving. On the contrary, her expression shifted to one of ecstasy, and her cheeks flushed as she recklessly dug deeper into my Dr. Takashina's brain. Suddenly I was having so much fun that I wanted to burst out laughing. The laughing man. Suddenly I was filled with horrible hatred. Suddenly I felt blissful. Suddenly a fierce lust surged up in me and my chest tightened up. She stirred my brain around, simultaneously stirring around my emotions. Emotions different from what I actually felt welled up in me. It dwelled separately from my heart, my soul, the consciousness known as me, thrusting at me the ambiguity of my own existence. I am ready for anything you throw at me. Time to get some chicken. At least I got chicken. Just to quote some famous MMO player known as Leroy Jenkins. At least I got chicken. As my psyche went to shreds by this mental rape, which would ultimately lead to the denial of my existence, I found myself walking under a railroad overpass. Taking the order into consideration, this time it would be the delicious hand. I expected my body became female, and I was awfully hungry, and maybe the victim had been on a diet or something. I crossed paths with Darth Spider-Man again. He appeared and disappeared when I last expected it, given how much his appearance made him stand out. Why hadn't the police or the media picked up on any information about him? Darth Spider spoke for the first time. He pointed at my right hand as he said it. A surreal spectacle. I, who had been walking along quickly, stopped and took a look at my right hand. For some reason, it was holding a five unrolled skewers of chicken. Each skewer was sticking out from between the fingers of my closed fist. Warm-looking steam. The juicy scent of cooked meat. It stimulated my appetite. My mouth watered. Unable to take it for another second, I bit in. An intense pain bolted through my fingers. But I didn't stop chewing. It was the first time I'd ever eaten such a delicious chicken. Lots of juice poured out of the meat. Delicious, lots delicious. I polished off the 5 chicken skewers in the blink of an eye. Well, without my noticing it, Darth Spider had disappeared. But I didn't give a damn about such a weird guy. I wanted to eat more. Stomach sought more food. The fingers of my right hand throbbed with pain, but my appetite far surpassed it. I looked back at my hand. I had just been holding skewered chicken. I was cradling an arm-sized hunk of bone with meat attached to it. It was dripping juices stained with the sleeve of my... When I had obtained it and how long I had... When had I obtained it and how long had I been carrying it? That too stopped mattering in the face of my hunger. I sank my teeth into the meat with all my might. Excruciating pain. I tore it apart with my meat. I masticated it. I tasted it. I swallowed it. It was soft and fairly fatty meat. A bit further into it. Both my hand and the area around my mouth had gone slick with lard, but I didn't let it bother me. It was delicious. I bit the meat off to the bone. Fat spread in my mouth, seeping in like it was melting, leaving behind a unique aftertaste. It hurt. For some reason it hurt so bad I thought I'd die, but I kept chewing. Compared to the size of the bone, there wasn't very much of the meat itself. I soon devoured all of it. At the end I licked up the thin scraps of flesh, just barely clinging to the bone. Savoring even the bone's taste, almost sucking at it. The 5 thin bones protruding at the end of it burned so hard that they wouldn't break if I bit them. I gave them a good gnawing. Pain so intense that I almost crumbled in place to ran through me, and with tears streaming down my face. I lapped up the juice pleasantly run out from within the bones. I ripped one of those bones up, and while collapsing in place, from how the stimulation of it seared me, it rolled around in my mouth. Crunch, crunch, munch, munch. He's eating himself. Right? When I saw it, it got trapped in my throat and I couldn't breathe. I unconsciously began to swing my legs around, kicking it. But without my head... that cord had been round around my ankles, I couldn't move free. Gee, yeah. Wow. With the both explosions with both my hands struck the ground. The vibrations from it sent pain spreading through my whole body, like waves on water. I pissed myself and passed out as I suffocated, and I never woke up again. I opened my eyes in a dim alley. The backdrop was a little different from before. 2 more to go? Am I right? As I walked, I leaned on the shoulder of a thuggish guy with his face pummeled to a pulp, looking like he was about to cry. Okay. Time to get puzzled. The 3 of them were in an awful state, myself included. Their clothes were drenched in blood and their faces had puffed up and they chipped a number of teeth. The one who'd done this was probably me, and there were the trio of thugs who'd pick the fight with me. After this, they would have their torsos torn apart and would die. Wow. I assume Chaos Child is even more intense. Time to look forward to that. Again, the Dark Spider-Man stood at the end of their path.
Oh, damn it!
The guy who was lending me his shoulder yelled at Dark Spider, but his face looking the way it was, his intimidation factor pretty much dropped my heart. Oh, yeah. Those thugs met Nishijo earlier and they somehow managed to... yeah.
あいつ化け物みたいだったぞ。それで返り討ちにあって逃げてきたんすか。だらしないっすね。とりあえず金よこせよ。金？とぼけんなよこら。てめえが言ったんじゃねえか。西条いたぶれば謝礼するとかってよ。
One of them seized the Dark Spider. Grabbing him by the collar, he heaved him up and smacked the black helmet.
ふざけたもんかぶりやがって。なめてんのか。外せ。外せよこら。
外せよこら. He forced the helmet to come off. I'd had an idea of how his face would appear beneath it, and it really was. Suwa Mamoru's fearless face. Bro. Just... Bro. He was Hazuki Shino's accomplice, and he'd been the other New Gen criminal. Suwa rammed the knee into the belly of the guy who was making a grab for him. The polish evident on how he carried himself set him utterly apart from the thugs and their violence.
ま、君たち3人とも用済みなんで。
The ground shook slightly.
なんだ、今の。
I felt a presence at Suwa's back, immersed in darkness, deep in the narrow alley. Something was there. Moreover, it prompted me to imagine it as being of abnormal size. In addition, it let out an uncanny growl. Suta was. Though we couldn't see it, the vivid bloodlust emitted by that monster made all 3 of our hearts wither utterly. At last it showed itself, a literal monster, together with footsteps that sounded like the ground rumbling. So grotesque, nothing else like it existed anywhere on Earth. Its brown skin glistened wetly, and its colossal head sat low upon its shoulders. Its red light flinted fiercely, and its mouth was torn wide across its face on either side. And its wrists were as thick around as locks. That bipedal monster came up to Suwa's side, then opened its mouth all the way. its rows of sharp fangs shone, reflecting the light of street lamps. Its draw was as low as a growl, and put greater fear in me than any beast I'd heard before in my life. It had the ferocity to make those who hear it quiver down to the very souls.
なんだこれ。スパークオーズが好きなんすよ。
Sua alone appeared completely unbothered by this monster's appearance. On the contrary, he touched the monster's leg with apparent satisfaction, stroking it.
それに出てくるエイリアンス。
The rancor pit. A second roll. The monster pressed a step closer to the stock-still trio. I tried to run. There was no way I would escape. Sorry. I tried to call for help, but there was no one in the area. An overwhelming power discrepancy. Overwhelming discrepancy. The difference in our latent potential as species was as much too great. With the beast before us, we three were all too helpless. But for the first time in our lives, we experienced heartfelt fear. When people end up like that, they fall silent, shrink back, and become unable to move so much as a single finger. The monster let out one breath, and it swung down its log-like arms. Yeah! In an instant, their two bodies had been torn apart, as if they were dolls. Blood and intestines splattered across the street, steaming, and it hurled their divided corpses viciously, sparing them on the handles attached to the telephone pole, dangling them down.
あとは君だけっすよ。
Oh, Xua's gaze penetrated me. I awoke to the fact that he was the one setting this alien to work. I told myself this was a delusion, but it didn't do any good. Faced with absolute terror and overwhelming violence, I just sank down and pissed myself afterward. It was all I could do to look dazedly up that monstrosity. Like my torso ripped apart, and as I got a taste of this killing method that regular people would never ever experience, I breathed my last. Breathed my last. Ooh. We got that thing squared off. How many times have I vicariously died by now? 3 times, 1 time, 7 times, 4 times, 2 times, 5 times. Human flesh is pretty darn tasty. It hurts. No more. Dog spiders. Get up is surreal. A gag. Well, how many times have I died? Who you're saying died? Who are you saying died? I'm not dead. That monster is like straight out of a horror movie. But Sua said the monster came from Spark Wars, but what about it? Human flesh is pretty darn tasty. The bones too. Why does Darth Spider wear black? Kazuki Shino is hot stuff, but she's scary. She's crazy. That's what makes her a hottie. That's way too high on the craziness scale. There's like a hot crazy scale, and that girl's just the no territory. Because too crazy. If Darth Spider is made of bones, what's his meat? How many times have I died for a gag? Wait, is this a gag or what? Not passed away died. Death, death, death. It's surreal. No more. Look, bones. I don't want to die, Black. I died. So kill me. Whew. Finally, we get back to something. Oh, inside the rucksack, Suwa wore on his back. His port played a strange mechanical sound. As for Suwa, he had long since grown completely accustomed to fearing it, and it was precisely because he had this sound that he had been able to murder the heart of Nishijo Takumi, a gigalomaniac. He uplifted an eternal prayer to thanks for God to it. Suwa would never forgive Nishijo Takumi. He'd dare to drive Hazuki to suicide. Hazuki, Suwa's childhood friend, from whom he had lived with constantly ever since he was born. In the back of his head, Suwa recalled what she had told him several years ago at the time when he decided to aspire to be a police detective, she to be a nurse.
私、守の子供を産みたい。
Watch me descend into madness, yeah. Both of their respective parents were followers of the Cosmic Church of Divine Light and God, and the great founder who had been there for them since birth. Suwa and Hazuki were raised together as children of the whole sect. It had also been the great founder's will that they bind themselves one to another, and so the two of them obeyed their sect's teachings to the point of offering up the life of the child residing in Hazuki's belly. Don't tell me that was Suwa's and Hazuki's child that was put into the pregnant man. Oh, please. Even though that Hazuki had reached martyrdom, he was convinced that they had done the right thing all along. That's the only logical conclusion there is, so for the baby, where it came from. The 7 incidents, commonly known as the New Generation Madness, Suwa and Hazuki had caused them together. Although midway through, he'd gotten pretty panicked when his senior, Ryatsuya Jiban, pointed out the contradictions in the group dive video. This video Suwa uploaded to YouTube had been recorded by projecting his memories. But since some time had passed since the incidents, part of his memory had grown ambiguous. Hold on, the video Suwa uploaded to YouTube had been recorded by projecting his memories into the camera. Projecting his memories into the camera. But since some time had passed since the incident, part of the... Okay. Was it project into the camera, or... Well, there's no other way. But that's weird. If that kind of stuff also works on cameras. Memories, they're directly digitized. Oh, okay. I didn't recall the exact details of the series, but since the video wouldn't seem very real without that sort of thing, he'd gone out of his way to look at the photos hanging in the lobby of Cornelius Tower. So his memory is being digitized. How does that connect to Steins Gate with Kurisa's digitized memories? Or in general, digitizing memories is like memory like Kurisa does. It's the same patent, using the same patent, VR technology. Okay. Reminder that the patent exists in reality. As a result, this video had become more realistic, but he'd picked the wrong picture to work from. He certainly hadn't guessed that something would look so strikingly different between the tower's completion and the present. If I want to finish today, hurry, yeah. Then again, that too had been suppressed thanks to the great founder's influence. So I would have issues with anyone who underestimated the power of the man who had founded the Cosmic Church of Divine Light. He had governmental connections, and he'd slipped several believers into the management at police headquarters. No matter how much just the likes of Van Howard, it was only natural that he hadn't been able to do a thing about it. Suwa's occupation as a detective, Hazuki's occupation as a nurse, the support of the pressure by the great founder put on the police and the media, the Noah system terminals provided by Nozomi Technology, making full use of these things. Both Suwa and Hazuki had focused solely and intently on killing. As for the reason they had gone such lengths to keep killing people, all of it was for the sake of pushing Nishijo Takumi to a psychological limit. After they forced him to awaken as gigalomaniac, they would kidnap him and harvest his code sample. Alternatively, by cloning the Nishijo Takumi who had been created from delusions, they would lure out the real Nishijo Takumi, capture him, and harvest his code sample. Real or copy, it didn't matter as long as he was Nishijo Takumi, which was why Suwa had posed as Nishijo Takumi using a wheelchair. It was the divine mandate that had been passed on to Suwa and Hazuki, and something they had to accomplish no matter what sacrifices were demanded of them in the process. And now, despite losing Hazuki, he had already overcome the tribulations set by God. Recollecting the face of the woman who had once loved him and whom he had loved in return, Suwa clenched his back teeth together as though withstanding grief, and next he walked up to Nishijo Takumi, whose heart he had just slaughtered. At the edge of the platform, Senna embraced her father's head, which she herself had decapitated, then squatted upon the tracks. Her chest dyed crimson in her father's blood. She laughed. Drool hung slackly from her mouth. Her eyes were unfocused. His mood having sobered, Suwa gave her a glance. That girl's done for, he muttered inwardly. Whatever the case, he was through with her, and he didn't take much of a need to kill her. Out of the gigalomaniacs who had been gathered in Tokyo as part of Project Noah, there remained two whose code example had yet to be taken. Excluding Kusunoki Yua, since she was an irregularity and no one had conceived of her being a gigalomaniac, that left Takumi Nishijo and Orihara Kozue. It must surely have been to the guidance of the divine light that here now these two had come tumbling into Suwa's hands. Suwa was grateful to heaven and the great founder for his deeds, for how his deeds were thus proven to have been perfectly in the right. Upon walking up to Takumi, he dropped to his knees, grabbed the slumping Takumi's upper arms, and attempted to drag him upright. But Takumi had gone totally limp, rendering him incapable of standing. His heart had died utterly. Serves him right, Suwa thought with a snort, then began walking off, dragging Takumi by the arm. Okay, now it's the sample taking thingy. Back to Noah. Kozupi is shouting something. Like she's suffering. Like it hurts her. Like she's having fun? I blinked my eyes. Where's Kozupi? She's fixed to a weird piece of art. Rimi's at her feet, all tied up. Something is strange about Kozupi. Her clothes are torn to pieces and creepy crawling. Creepy crawling, what is it? Her skin is Her thin skin is like on her cheeks, on her neck, on her arms, around her belly button, and on her thighs. Creepy crawling, groping and groping. Lots of something are wiggling under Kazupi's skin. What the hell? Not just 1, 10, 20, around 30? They must be parasites. Gross little caterpillars. Kazupi flails her head around. Shake, shake. Her eyes are crazy. She's drooling, slubble, slubber. Her face looks really stupid. It's kind of entertaining, and she's wearing something on her head. Lots of cords stick out of it. Like a toy, like it transforms into anything set.
楽しいことでもあったのですか？西条匠。
So it was a delusion about that asshole. And an old guy I've never seen before. Who?
なるほど。
This needed a lot of quality checking this
無
thing.
意識に折原梢と妄想をシンクロさせているのですか。随分と物好きですね。そんなに焦らずとも、彼女の次は君にたっぷりとあの拷問を受けさせてあげますよ。
I'm next? No way. I'm next? No way. I'm next? No way. I don't want suffering. I don't want pain.
あなたなら止められる。今なら止められる。あなたなら。
My wrists should have been bound by behind my back. But as if it had been but as if it had a will of its own, the cord loosened and fell away. Tied up, lying there, Rimi turned to gaze alone. In my direction, her eyes were pleading with me, the vast machinery letting out an eerie hum, residing in state at the center of dome-shaped space. This was Noah to itself. She was urging me to shatter it. Rimi's eyes pleaded with me. A tall, intellectual-looking man. Norisa had his back turned to me and was watching Kazupi being tortured with a business-like look on his face. He hadn't noticed my movements. There were no other people around, not even Suwa. I could do it now. The only one who could do it was me. I was scared. What if Norisa caught me in the act? What if I failed? I trembled and thought about it. Come on, just do it. There was something wrong with this game, entrusting the fate of the world to the likes of me. But I had to do it. Found myself able to make up my mind about it unexpectedly fast. Maybe I'd grown stronger? That's right, I'm strong. I'm strong. Stood up slowly. Norisa still hadn't noticed. It was kind of a dumbass for being the last boss. Was it so much fun to watch Kazupi suffer? It disgusted me. It gritted my teeth. Come forth, the sword. Ripples appeared in the air, in a blue light. I took hold of it, I felt it. Neither cold nor hot, neither hard nor soft. I drew it out of the dark sea. A long sword settled in my hand.
Nani?
Nani? Now he noticed, albeit too late, I real booted my D-sword. I sent particles flying into the dead spots of everyone here. Didn't require any concentration. It didn't matter how it operated, all I had to do was imagine it. Gripped the hilt of my D-sword in both hands, and its glow transformed from blue to red.
心殺されたはず。
Norisa looked at me, disbelief written in his countenance. He was recoiling. I'd won. I grinned, raised my sword, and had a delusion. This was the Sword of Light. It possessed amazing powers like the ability to slice the air. If I released its full potential and swung it all the way, it could turn anything in the world to dust.
くらえこれが
I couldn't come up with a name for my special move right off the bat, so I gave it a shouting attack name. So I gave up on shouting and attacking him like in shonen manga. I took the power I had stocked up in my D-sword by means of delusion and unleashed all of it at Noah too. Yeah, it's not gonna do anything. Or is it? It does something, apparently. 2 months later. The winter sky wasn't very blue. In exchange, unlike the skies of summer, it had a cool and clear feeling to it in morning. I'd opened my eyes to the sound of my alarm clock, and I looked up at the sky as I brushed my teeth. 2 months since that tumult, Shibuya was still in the midst of reconstruction. As New Year's passed, Shibuya had begun recovering its previous bustle and gaudiness, little by little. A voice called me. I looked over. Rimi was coming up the stairs. It was the first time I'd seen her in her uniform since that day. Rimi smiled at me and whipped a salute.
ビシッ、おはよう。朝ごはん急いで作るね。
She held a convenience store bag, and inside were white bread, eggs, and milk. Standing before the sink, she cheerfully began her preparations. These past 2 months, Rimi had practically been coming to my base on a daily basis, and she cooked for me every time. Apparently, she herself had never done any real cooking before, so it doubled as practice for her. I wanted to tell her not to turn me into her guinea pig, but it made me happy to be able to eat a girl's home cooking, so in the end I just bit in the bullet. If you have a look around this container, there's a washing machine, there's a lot of new stuff around this container.
今日から学校再開だね。
Soyme Academy had been closed ever since the earthquake, but today it was reopening. I was going to seize this as my chance to stop my half-hikikomori lifestyle to start seriously attending school.
タクとまた学校に通えるなんて嬉しいな。
Okay, so this CG has been here since the start. Okay. It makes me happy getting to go to school with you. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry. Rimi said as she cracked an egg. As you might expect, it was impossible for us to tolerate the cold and eat outside smack dab in the middle of winter. Carrying inside the 2 servings worth of toast and scrambled eggs Rimi had made, we laid them on a low table. Then we sat side by side on the sofa.
じゃあ、いただきます。
いただきます。
So did he smash Noah too now, or? After putting my hands together, I reached for the butter placed at the edge of the table. However, Rimi had done the same thing almost simultaneously, and our fingertips brushed atop the container of butter. What a classic love comedy development. I haven't finished completely yet, yeah. Though I smiled wryly at it in my heart, my eyes soon met Rimi's, where she sat close beside me and my heart started pounding. Rimi didn't take her eyes away from me either, nor did she pull back her head. Both of us, having gone rigid, we gazed at each other with our fingers still touching.
タク。
Rimi entwined her fingers with my hand. She closed her eyes and softly and raised her face toward me a little. I felt myself naturally holding Rimi's hand in return. And as I neared her lips...
朝から何イチャついてんの？
The what? Come on!
あ！
Flustered, I sprang away from Rimi. Come on, Nanami. Just... You ruined the mood, Nanami. You ruined it. When I looked at the door, Nanami had appeared there without my noticing, arms folded and an exasperated look on her face.
ナナちゃん、おはよう。
ナナミ、心臓に悪いことするなよ。
お兄とリミさんってほんと仲いいね。焼けちゃうな。
Yeah, she has a broke on.
ねえねえ、実際のところどこまで行ったの？どこまでって？またまたとぼけてないで教えてよ、リミさん。
Oh, that hurts. Apparently Nanami had settled on Rimi as her target. Marching into the room, she dragged over my computer chair and sat in front of Rimi.
キスは当然したとして、その先は？ちょっとからかわないでよ。いいじゃん、教えて。
Nanami, that's none of your damn business.
教えない。じゃあ鬼、教えてよ。どこまで行ったか。
Nanami, that's none of your darn business. Forget about telling or not telling. We haven't so much as kissed yet. Ah, I'm such an idiot at LBS. I've had so many chances before now. This chance, it felt like I'd probably never graduate from being a virgin. Ah, depressed by my own uselessness, I took a gulp of milk.
リミさんがのんびりしてるなら、ナナが鬼を奪っちゃおうかな。
I pulled a ginormous pit take.
鬼、きったな。
お前。
冗談だよ。本気にされても困っちゃうってば。
Try not to surprise me so much. The three of us headed for school side by side. Rimi was humming that Phantasm song again. Passing through Shoto Park, we took my usual shortcut. You could see some faint traces of the earthquake in the park, such as how part of the stone wall around the pond remained crumbled. Even so, it was far better off compared to the wretched state of the heart of Shibuya.
おはようございます。
Yuo was sitting on my bench. Turning back in our direction, she put on a soft smile and lowered her head.
西条くん、昨日はとても楽しかったです。昨日？
ユアと一緒に秋葉原まで買い物に行ったんだ。
How much longer is this going to take?
あ、わかった。お人形さんでしょう。
フィギュアと言えよ。
Meh, but it was true that we'd gone to buy figures.
新しいセイラちゃん。早速部屋に飾りました。私も行きたかったな。
リミってフィギュアに興味あるの？
When I asked her, she turned a bit bashful.
っていうか、タクの好きなもの、私も好きになりたいし。
That's an instance of overly attached girlfriend.
わあ、大胆発言。だったら今度一緒に買いに行きましょう。本当？ありがとうございます。
Yuo and Rimi had totally hit it off. Yuo and Nanami were in different wings of the school, so we parted at the entrance. As I switched to my indoor shoes, somebody blew into my ear from behind me. Goosebumps sprang up on me with a shiver, and I look back as I turn blah blah blah. They're still, I guess, they're wearing a closed-lipped smile.
おはよう、匠。
おはよ
おはよう、あやちゃん。あやちゃん。
Aya-chan. Did they get so close to each other? Aya abruptly tilted her head at what Rimi had called her.
初めてよ。そんな呼び方をされたのは。悪くないわ。
It isn't too.
でしょ？ファンタズムのライブがあるの。あさって。
She changed the subject out of the blue as usual. I guess it was hard to get a handle on.
よかったら来て。
う。僕に言ってるの？
匠に言ってるのよ。それと、リミも。あ、ほんと？絶対行くね。
Phantasm had disbanded once, but word had it that once the new year came around, they'd undergone a rapid revival. I didn't know what kind of change in heart in her had brought it about, but I wanted to hear Aya's songs one more time.
でも、匠は渡さないわ。
Woo! This would make for some, no. Netorare dojins. That would make some good solid base to work off for a Netorare dojin. I didn't know why she tacked on the butt. I reached out and lightly caressed my cheek, as though to put Rimi back in her place. Wow.
じゃあね、匠。
She's playing the I'm famous, bitch. You're not getting that, boy. She smiled alluringly and climbed the stairs ahead of us. Dazed, I watched her leave without any idea of what was going on.
たく、鼻の下伸びてる。
え？あ、
Hastily put a hand to my mouth.
冗談。
When we arrived outside our classroom, Cosby came charging down the hallway, spelling from ear to ear. And collapsed. What? No, she collided with a bike coming out of a classroom and landed hard on her bottom. Teary-eyed, she apologized to him and then finally managed to come up to us.
おはようさんさんなの。怪我はない？廊下を走っちゃダメだよ、コズピー。おにゃー。
Anya. Cosby began fidgeting, but then she peered up at my face from
たく
below.
みさんに早く教えたかったのら。
教えるって何を？
ほんとね。
Cosby pointed in the direction she'd just come running from. When I looked more closely, Senna was standing there, leaning against the wall. Her arms were folded and she had a rather sour expression pasted on her face.
セナさん、退院したんだ。
Senna had been hospitalized throughout these past 2 months. The psychological assault that Suwa had inflicted on her had kept dragging at her the whole time. Senna raised her face and began slowly walking toward us. She was as scary as ever. Although she wasn't doing anything, she bore a certain aura around her, like she might slap someone around across the face any minute now. I'd been going to visit Senna in the hospital twice a week, but no matter how much I tried to start a conversation with her, in the end, she hadn't listened to a word I said. It had been almost torturously awkward. Maybe she really disliked me. I didn't get along well with Senna. A sense of tension stretched tautly between us. Rather, I was just getting unilaterally terrified.
というわけで、今日は 学校が終わったら隊員のお祝いをしよう。
Cosby was the only one acting all excited. I kind of felt like, with this atmosphere, it'd be a pretty shitty party.
おい、西条。
That was when Senna finally opened her mouth. I cringed. I couldn't meet her eyes.
これを。
Senna held something out to me. It was a small stick with winner written on it.
あ、ガルガリ君の当たり棒だろら。
Aww. Oh no! That blush. How long has it? Perplexed, I accepted it. Senna soon whipped her head away, looking off to the side.
お前に言いたいことがある。
なんでしょう。
It must have been a figment of my imagination that Senna's cheeks somehow appeared to be blushing pink, right?
お前のことが好きだ。
Oh, this is getting complicated here, isn't it?
え？
ポピー？
Her abrupt confession left not just me, but also Rimi and Kazupi staring blankly. For a second I thought she was teasing me, but said I wasn't the type to crack that kind of joke. Which meant, are you serious?
何度もお見舞いに来てくれて嬉しかったんだ。
I was happy when you... But you didn't say a damn word and didn't listen. Why? How? Just... Yeah.
言わせるな、このバカが。
She'd gone all dairy, then turned back to Tsune mode, totally of her own accord. No, but even if she said that to me all of a sudden... A beat too late, Rimi cried out in surprise. Cosby, perhaps still uncomprehending, had her eyes as wide as
何度
saucers.
先ほど異論があるのか。
張りまくりだよ。そんな、とにかくダメだって。
Rimi and Cosby were wildly confused, but the most bewildered one of all was me, to think that she'd made such a proclamation to me. Without any idea how to react, I looked up at the clear sky beyond the window. Somehow right at the start of the semester it was turning into a quite noisy day, huh? Would this peaceful time, full of promise and fun, continue like this every day from now on? I sure wanted to continue. I wished for it from the bottom of my heart. Suddenly I looked at the reflection of my face in the window. The reflection there wasn't me. It was a wrinkly... What is this? What is this? A visual novel within a visual novel? All color, all light went away. I was hugging my knees in a pitch black space. Before me was the sole light source of this space. It was like a monitor, like a window, like a picture frame. Inside it was Rimi, Senna, and Cosby were chatting about something, looking as they were enjoying themselves. I couldn't hear their voices as I watched it. My emotions lay absolutely still, or else maybe my heart was dead. Then I realized I had been watching my delusions, the 2D world into which I fled, a perfect illusion. Since when had it become a delusion?
最初からですよ。
I looked behind me, noticed I stood there, but it was dark and all I could see were his feet.
諏訪君に心を殺されたではありませんか。
It's not over. I'd been a delusion ever since then, the whole time?
聞 君のコードサンプルは採取できました。もう用済みですから、いつでも塵に帰ってもらって結構です。
Bro. Huge bro moment. Bro. The game fooled me.
ああ、
I felt nothing because my heart was dead. I should have felt nothing. Yet a single tear streaked down my cheek. At the very end, I'd gone back to being a loser. I'd run away from the harshness of reality.
最後に幸せな夢を見られてよかったですね。
Sorry, Remy. I apologized, but I didn't really get why I had to apologize anymore, nor did I feel any guilt. And I decided to return to the continuation of my delusions from before. Someone would probably be nice enough to kill me sooner or later. So until then, I wanted to wallow in the happiness of the world I'd fled to. What's happening? Since when did it start raining? Maybe the rain had been brought into being by Noah too? The gaze falls from the sky. The stare pierces through the rain clouds coated in pitch black. It pours down on me like the rain he's done for. I whisper in my heart to the owner of the gaze. I will not skip the endings. I don't feel the chill of the rain. In fact, the droplets on my cheeks seem almost warm. It's the first time I've thought of rain as being warm. Perhaps it's because the dome housing Noah 2 had been enveloped in cold air enough to freeze me. Reflected in my eyes is a shattered city. Reflected in my eyes is despair. Reflected in my eyes is death. Reflected in my eyes is nothingness. No one is here. No one moves. No one lives. The only thing audible is the sound of the rain continuing to fall. Noah's Ark has already been set into motion. We were unable to stop it. The future holds only despair. If everything remains this way, anything alive and anything dead, will it all be gently enveloped and washed away? I, too, hear him murmur this in his heart. Such a beautiful heart. I walk over to him, lying limp in the rubble. It's my fault. He's ended up like this. If I handled things better, he wouldn't have needed to become involved. Guilt torments me. I blame myself. Forgive me. I'll lay you to rest now, so... His manner of birth was all too sad, and so, too, would be his manner of death. The one whose heart was so timid, fragile as glass, and so pure it shattered into pieces. I didn't want him to suffer, at least at the end of all this. Lying there, he looks at me with empty eyes. I push aside my emotions. Despite seeing him, I look away to keep myself from weeping. If you and I are the only ones in the world, if we continue gazing solely at each other like this for the rest of all of eternity, would my word be reduced to what your eyes reflect? Would your world be reduced to what my eyes reflect? You are what's reflected in my eyes. I am what's reflected in yours. Viewing it that way instantly reduces the size of the world. At least, in the time you have lived, I'll become your world. Whether it's a painful world, a difficult world, or even a sorrowful world, I'll make it so you no longer have to see it all.
ね
Resolving myself, I speak. Hanging my head, I spread my arms apart, like aiming to fly above the rain clouds, like catching all of the rain.
えあなたを見つめる妄想殺してあげる
The feathers of light dance wildly, like a gift from the sky for his funeral. I slowly kneel down to where he lay. I'll cry if I see your eyes now. I'm sorry for not facing you. Softly raise his head. His body is empty of tension. It's as if it's as if he's prepared for death.
辛いよねごめんごめんね今楽にしてあげるからね
Demeanor tells me it isn't merely conceit on my part. Well, he wore a very peaceful smile. That smile is so sad. Even though I felt it in all this time. My tears blur my vision. Because I didn't want him to see those tears. Because he had finally attained peace. I didn't want to worry him any further. I kissed him on the lips. A cold and dry sensation seeming more and more sorrowful. But his trembling stops at my kiss. Cherish how my warmth has been of some use to him. Because he'll see my tearful face if my lips leave his. Because I'll want to kiss him again if my lips leave his. Because if my lips leave his, I'll become selfish and I won't be able to kill him. I remained like that, plunging my D-sword to his chest. Sensation of tearing through the skin of his chest, boring into his flesh, threading between his bones, steadily sinking its way into his body. All of it passes through the sword and into my hands. I'm so sorry. You can sleep as long as you want now. Farewell. The sky continues to pour rain. This is a pretty nice CG. It isn't blue, not a speck of azure anywhere. Even if I wish for it, I can no longer see it. Is the sky blurring because of the rain? Because of my tears? As I hold up his body as it gradually dissolves, enveloped in particles of light, I stretch my hand toward the sky. Somebody, tell me, where might that sky of ours have gone?
Thank you.